In my past videos, I told you that I study business English, and that's a one-year postgraduate degree. And before that, I obtained my BA and my MA in English Studies. And this is what I want to talk about in this video, my English Studies. This was what I was studying for 5 years at the University of Wrocław or University of Wrocław in Poland, and I studied it for 5 years for my BA, my MA, and this is where I'm doing my postgrad degree as well. And so everything I'll be saying is about my experience at this university, and different universities may offer different courses, and if you're interested in what I did, you can continue watching. Hi, I'm Laura and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I make videos about veganism, traveling, lifestyle design, and learning. And if that sounds interesting to you, you can subscribe to my channel, and you can also follow me on Instagram if you'd like to see more of my daily life. Before we begin, tell me what you study, tell me what your major is and what courses you have, and if you like your major, and tell me everything about it. Please let me know down in the comments below. Okay, so I'll start by saying that I graduated from my BA and my MA degrees at University of Wrocław, and I obtained the title of English Philologist, which is an incorrect title, but this is the official translation. If you don't know, philology is one method of linguistic research in historical linguistics. So wrongly, but technically, I'm a philologist, which is an incorrect term. I would rather say that I'm a linguist, and that's true, but I'll tell you why in a second. Basically, I majored in English as a language, and I minored in linguistics, literary studies, and translation. And this is what we called at university specializations. So if you're from the US or from around the world and you know the system of majors and minors, my major is English as a language, and my minors are literary studies, translation, and linguistics. My experience of my BA and my MA in English studies were extremely different to other people's experiences. I'll tell you why in a second. So my BA program lasted for 3 years and my MA program lasted for 2 years, and that is a standard system in Poland at Polish universities. In both of these programs, the types of classes that you can have are either lectures, tutorials, workshops, or seminars, and some of them can be independent, that you can just pass as an independent course, and some of them may be a part of a module like literature or practical English or teaching. These can be modules. So in my BA program, we had the following fields of study and the following types of courses. So we had practical English, and that was a module, and this module had from 3 to 5 classes every single semester, and these classes were academic writing, phonetics, grammar, vocabulary, and speaking. And that was a module that everyone had to take, and depending on the year, you either had all 5 courses like in year 1, or you had 3 courses in year 2, or you had 1 course in year 3, and that was something that everyone had to take. Then there were literature and linguistics courses, and there were some compulsory courses that everyone had to take and everyone had to pass in order to graduate. But later in year 2 and 3, we could choose what we wanted to do more of, and whether we wanted to focus on literature or on linguistics or in translation or on teaching. I'll focus on that in a second. And these courses were Introduction to Linguistics, and in this course, throughout 1 year, you had to learn about every single discipline in linguistics, so phonetics, phonology, morphology, syntax, semantics, pragmatics, cognitive linguistics, neurolinguistics, and everything around linguistics, basically. So this course was an entry-level course, everyone had to take it, and it was in year 1. And everyone passed this course, it's very easy, it's entry-level, and there was no time to really go deep into every single field of linguistics. But then there is the second course, which is descriptive grammar, and this is something that many people hate, because this course, on the other hand, is really difficult. This course can be hard for many people because these areas in linguistics like phonology, morphology, syntax, they are really taught in this course, in this module, descriptive grammar. So there is almost like 1 semester, 1 full semester on phonology, and then you have 1 full semester on morphology, and then you have 1 full semester on syntax, and then 1 more semester on semantics and pragmatics. And this whole descriptive grammar course lasts for 2 years. At least this is what we had at my university. And we only had tutorials and no lectures. I know that at some universities you also have lectures on descriptive grammar. We didn't have that, but we were really working hard. This course was really intense. Many people found it really difficult and I loved it. It was one of my favorite courses because I have always loved linguistics and I've always loved phonology and morphology and syntax. That's when I started tutoring other students in linguistics and in syntax and morphology and phonology, and I loved it. So descriptive grammar was hell for some people. For me, it was heaven. Then we had the language acquisition lecture and it was super interesting. It was super information packed and I loved it. I loved our professor. I loved everything about this course, and language acquisition in general is fascinating to me. So we also had that. And then we had historical and contrastive grammar, but we could choose if we wanted to have tutorials in historical grammar or in contrastive grammar. I chose contrastive grammar classes because even though I was so interested in the historical grammar of English, I really wanted to learn about the systematic differences in the phonology, morphology, and syntax of Polish and English, because we didn't have any courses on Polish, and when you grow up in Poland and you go to Polish schools, you learn that. You learn about Polish linguistics in primary school. And I really wanted to go to what I learned in primary school and refresh my knowledge. So that's why I took contrastive grammar classes and they were super fun. I loved them. Yeah, I don't regret it. And I also had a lot of fun in my historical grammar lecture, which was just incredibly interesting. So these were all of the compulsory classes that everyone had to take in the area of linguistics. Within the compulsory literature and culture classes, we had the Introduction to Literary Studies, in which we were learning how to analyze prose and poetry, and we were learning how to analyze characters and how to spot different types of rhymes like iambic pentameter and things like that. So that was also an entry-level course that was in our first year, and I liked this course so much, and I discovered that I really liked literature. So even though I was a nerd and I loved linguistics, I really liked learning about the culture as well and literature, and I have always been like that. So the fact that I could combine it with my interests and my skills and I could learn about everything I wanted to, that was just the best. And if you watched my Should You Change Your Major video, you know why that was so incredible to me. But anyway, that was the tutorial on the Introduction to Literary Studies. We also had tutorials on British and American culture. They were slightly different, but I think it all depends on the teacher, and we learned about the history of the English-speaking countries. We also learned about the history of the United States, and we learned about the culture and the customs and just basically introduction to the culture, but also to the deeper levels of culture, and we were analyzing the culture from an academic point of view, and that was really interesting to me as well. We also had lectures and tutorials in both American and British literature. I loved these courses so much. They were intense. Like when I told you about descriptive grammar, how intense it was, literature was as intense and also as hard for people. Because reading 2 books a week, one for American and one for British literature classes, every single week for 2 years was so intense. It was so intense, but I loved it. I loved it. I loved experiencing the literature. I loved reading. I loved learning about the philosophies and different historical contexts for different authors, and it was just magical to me. That was a whole new world because I only learned about different types of literature in my life, and that was incredible. I love these courses. We had literary theories course in year 3, and that was really, really interesting, but also very demanding because we were learning how to analyze literature on a deeper level from the philosophical point of view and from the different types of literary theories point of view. Before I go into specializations, we also had philosophy, and you could either take a course in philosophy and linguistics, philosophy and literature, and global philosophy. And we also had Latin and other languages as compulsory classes. I took French. People could take German, Spanish, Russian, Italian, whatever they wanted. I took French, and we also had physical education. Yes, we had to do PE as well. And now just briefly on the specializations, we had the linguistics specialization, in which you could take more classes in linguistics. We had the literature specialization, and you could take many more classes on literature, like global literature. You could take translation as your specialization, and that was also very fascinating. And there you learn about different facets of translation, the translation theories, practical translation, you translated texts, and that was basically the third specialization. You could also take a teaching module, which is not technically a specialization because it's something extra, because you learn how to teach English as a second language, and you could also take that. I think that these specializations change every year, and probably there are some specializations that I haven't even heard of now available at this university, but this is what I took, this is what I did, and as my specializations, I took literature, linguistics, and translation. Why? Because I was super into everything. I was also doing the teaching specialization, don't get me wrong, like I took everything. At some point I was doing everything, and that took so much time, but I gave up on my teaching specialization just because it was structured to teach us how to teach at public institutions from primary to middle school to high school, and I cannot teach anyone younger than a high school student. I just know that I can't, and I proved it to myself when I did my teaching practice at a primary school. It was great, I loved it, but after that I knew that I would never work at a public institution, and I would never teach beginners, and I would never teach children, basically. So I gave up on my teaching specialization. I was doing it for 2 years, but in year 3 of my BA, I gave it up, and instead I took my literature and linguistics specializations, and I've been doing my translation specialization for 2 years. So in the end, when I graduated, I obtained my English degree, and I minored in linguistics, literature, and translation. But one more course that everyone had to take was seminar, the BA seminar. So everyone had to take their seminar in either British literature, American literature, linguistics, teaching, or translation. And I chose linguistics because I loved it, and I really wanted to write my dissertation in linguistics. And I did it. I wrote my BA thesis on the French and the English subjunctive, and I loved it. It was so much fun. Of course, it was nerve-wracking, but I loved it. Also in your BA, when you were taking the teaching and the translation specializations or modules, you had to do your teaching or translation practice. So I did both. I did my teaching practice at a primary school, and I did my translation practice at a travel agency. So when I graduated, I also had this translation practice that was approved, and that was basically saying that I'm a translator. I didn't complete my teaching specialization, so I didn't have the teaching qualifications, official ones, and I also wrote my thesis in linguistics. So having obtained my BA, I became a linguist and a translator and a specialist in the English language and literature and history and culture and linguistics and translation. Basically, when you graduate from an English degree in Poland, you have all of these titles unofficially, because this is what you do. This is what you do during your degree. And I remember many people had this misconception that when you go to language studies and you study a language as your BA and as your MA, all you do is talk to each other in this language, and how can it be so hard? So that was my bachelor degree, and my master degree was slightly different than everybody else's. Our BA degree was called English Philology, which I already told you that is a wrong term, and our MA degree was called English Language and Literature, so that was very good. But I didn't really complete only this course because I combined it with another degree. So in general, when you decide to do your degree in English language and literature, the structure is very similar. You have the translation and teaching modules that you can take. You don't have the practical English anymore. And basically, the only compulsory classes that you have are monograph lectures, in which you learn about one specific topic, and you're only taught about one specific thing. So it's like a mega course. And depending on the professor, the exam may be like an essay or coursework or presentations, like anything. And then you had a lot of elective courses. And elective courses were basically in any of the areas that the institute offered. So again, linguistics, literature, translation, teaching, anything you like. When I was in my first year, I was doing my teaching practice, and that was fun. But after I passed my first semester, I noticed that the courses for the rest of the year and for the second year were the same as the courses that I took as electives in my teaching specialization in my BA, I just gave up and I didn't do any specialization. Like, I didn't complete any specialization in my MA because translation I already did and teaching I didn't want to. So in my MA, I only focused on fun. I only focused on taking courses that I really liked, and I took only the electives that I love. So for instance, a course in haiku and American Images poetry. Like, that was incredibly fascinating to me. But apart from the elective courses, you also had to take a seminar in American literature, British literature, linguistics, translation, or teaching. So you were, again, choosing one field. And these seminars lasted for 2 years, and you basically came to class and your tutor, your supervisor, was teaching you about one specific topic, and then you had meetings with your tutor during which you were discussing your thesis topic and you were writing your thesis and submitting it chapter by chapter, subchapter by subchapter, and you were just discussing it with your tutor. And there was also an academic writing course, which was a part of the module together with the seminars. So that was an MA module, and you had the seminars, the meetings with your supervisor, and the academic writing sessions. During your MA, you also had to take one foreign language course, and I took French again. And that would be it. But I told you that during my MA degree, I really wanted to focus on learning things that would be so interesting to me and that would be just my dream to learn about them. And so many of the elective courses offered by the university were just not up my street. I didn't like them, I didn't like the ideas of them, or sometimes I didn't like the professors, or I didn't really want to put that much effort and work into learning about some obscure area of translation that I wasn't really interested in. So what I did is I personalized my studies. The first thing that I did was I took the Academy of World Cinema and the Academy of Polish Film as my elective courses. Basically, the best cinema in the world, which is here in Wrocław, the New Horizons Cinema, offers this academic course in the history of world cinema and the history of Polish film. And I was taking these courses anyway. I started taking the Academy of World Cinema course in my BA, and I didn't really take it as my elective because I already had so much work. So I just didn't want to feel pressured. But in my MA, I took them as my electives. So I didn't really have to take the boring electives. I took the fascinating electives, and I was learning about the cinema, and that was the best decision I could make, and that brought me so much joy. But that course didn't really add up to my credit, and I had to have enough credit to graduate. And what I did was I took some compulsory courses from the Empirical and Theoretical Linguistics degree, which was a separate degree offered by our institute. And what I did was I took some of those classes from this degree, and I wrote a letter to the dean asking her to include the credit from these courses in my general score and to count them as part of my degree. And I did it. I took the course in syntax, which was intense. It was a very, very intense course, and that was a course in minimalism, and I loved it so much. It was very intense and also very stressful, but I learned so much, and I preferred that course to any other course offered by my institute as part of our usual MA degree. So that was a very good decision, that was a very smart decision, and by doing that, I had a very unique experience. So my degree was highly personalized and I loved it. And when I graduated, I obtained my degree in English language and literature, and I specialized in linguistics again. And this time, the topic of my thesis was the syntax of coordinated subjects in Polish, in Slavic languages, and in English. I know, that was a comparative analysis type of thesis. It was very, very interesting, but also very, very difficult. As you can tell, I love my courses. And if you'd like me to, I can make a whole new video about my university experience, what I was going through, because my university experience was both amazing and traumatizing, very difficult, but also very fulfilling. And I had so many ups and downs, and if you want me to, I can make a video about it, so let me know down in the comments. Also, if you want me to, I can make separate videos on linguistics, literature, culture, everything that we were doing at my university and during my degrees. So please let me know down in the comments if you'd be interested in watching videos like that, because I'm super excited about this topic and I want to share everything that I know with you guys, and let me know if you'd be interested in that. Check out my other videos and playlists if you're interested, and subscribe to my channel if you'd like to see more similar content, and also follow me on Instagram if you'd like to see more of my daily life. That's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you soon. Bye!